What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the PFN Scouting Podcast. I'm Ian Cummings, joined by my good friend and co-host, Derek Tate. He's on the left side today. I'm on the right side. We're switching it up, just like we're switching up our process for the college football season. Throughout the entire summer, we've been doing preseason draft analysis, and I want to impress upon you, if you want to catch up on some of our analysis on position groups and, preseason scouting and our early observations for every single position for quarterbacks and even our top offensive players, just kind of going through that list, go sift through our previous podcast, make a little marathon out of it if you want to, until you get sick of our voices, right? But, make a marathon out of it, because we packed together a lot of analysis for you in the preseason stretch. But now we are finally here, Derek. The college football season is officially underway with week 0 this past weekend. Before, we're going to preview some of the matchups for week 1, because that's really where the brunt of the action first picks up. But first off, there were a few games in week 0. Did you catch any of the action, Derek? Did you see, I know Florida State and Georgia Tech was the big one. Georgia Tech actually upset Florida State, who was ranked top 10 to start the year. So that one was pretty big. Did you catch any of the early action? What were some of the games, some of the prospects that might have caught your eye?
Yeah, no, I call it the Florida State game, and I'm a Florida State fan, so watching them.
I know Cam is a Florida State guy too, so condolences to Cam over at College Football Network.
That was tricky, man. I mean, they got dominated up front, which was kind of surprising, because I actually think that the Florida State front seven has some talent on it. So to see them just kind of get pushed around, even on the other side of the football too, I thought DJ Uiagalelei, I thought he played okay. I do still worry about his processing, and because it did seem like there were a lot of easy throws, a lot of screens, like almost they were trying to protect him, trying to ask him not to do too much. But yeah, they got dominated up front, which was a big surprise. Tailback's name for Georgia Tech is kind of slipping my mind right now. Jamal Haynes. I thought he looked spry. I thought he looked really good. Roydell Williams, I thought he was okay for Florida State. Obviously they have a couple versatile weapons in that offense that it looked great on the first drive, and then it was a little bit more inconsistent throughout the contest. So I just turned 38 years old today.
Happy
so
birthday.
Watching watching that as my hey, here's the new college football season, and your top 10 Seminoles are getting knocked off in week 1 or week 0. So they're 0-1. The 0 stands for 0 wins through 0 weeks of college football for Florida State. But I was a little surprised by how they got Georgia Tech physically imposed their will in the trenches on both sides.
Yeah, for sure. That was one of the first things that stood out to me, especially on the, for the defensive side of Florida. Well, first off, Derek, happy birthday, man. You didn't even say anything. You were going to let us go through the entire podcast without saying anything.
Oh, I'm 38 now. It's not all that exciting to turn 38.
I'm getting that experience too. Yeah, once you get past like mid-20s, then it's like, hey, let's slow the roll a little bit. It's getting a little too fast.
I'm not going in the Slack chat on Pro Football Network going, hey man, it's my birthday. Throw me a virtual party or anything like that. But.
Well, happy birthday. I will say, Michigan State, we are accepting applicants for fans. So if you want to hop over, right, the Spartans might be coming back. We'll see. For those of you who don't know, I live 15 minutes from East Lansing, so I grew up a Michigan State fan. So when Mark D'Antonio was going at it and winning games, and they made it to the playoffs, right, that was the peak of my CFB fandom. I've kind of neutralized now because of your draft analysts. You got to stay objective, but it is good to see the talent that's coming in. But Florida State, I think I thought some of the offensive performers were pretty good. Like I think Maurice Smith is the name of their center. I thought he had some good reps. I thought he was a bright spot on that front. The defensive line was a little concerning to me, because Patrick Payton, man, I mean, that was the biggest thing. DJ Uiagalelei at the quarterback spot, right? Like you said, they were kind of protecting him, I think. And part of that lends to the processing. I think another part of it is the biggest flaw for him. And we talked about this on the QB pod. I know I'm jumping around a lot, but I wanted to go back to DJ real quick on the offensive side. But the biggest flaw with him entering the year was really the lack of control with his accuracy, right, in the intermediate and deep ranges. And we were really hoping that he would kind of chip away at that, right, improve that facet of his game, because that was the biggest roadblock toward getting early round capital, which we both agreed that he had the talent to get to that point. But I think you're starting to see Florida State, the schematics and the game plan is kind of limited because he can't hit those shots down the field without, that consistent accuracy. And then even in the short ranges, there were balls that were thrown behind receivers, right? Not supplementing rack placement. So he's got to get that down. I think he'll get another chance to rebound, but accuracy is still a pretty big concern for DJ. And then also processing, like you said, it's just, right now it's looking to me still a developmental project, but there is time to correct that. On the defensive side, Patrick Payton was expected by a lot of people to kind of become that premier defensive threat now that they lost Jared Verse and Braden Fiske. And the biggest question for a lot of people heading out of the season last year, because Payton was productive last year, 7 sacks, 14 tackles for loss, 10 pass deflections. I mean, the dude is athletic. He is long, but a lot of people were wondering, was he just kind of benefiting from the presence of Verse and Fiske, or was he actively participating as a defensive disruptor? And right now, I think he's struggling to adjust without those two guys on the line. I think that's the biggest thing.
I mean, he was a ghost in that game. He was a ghost.
Yep. Not setting the edge. I mean, he's just a little lighter, and I think the power and the strength. I mean, and to be fair, Jared Verse was probably one of the best run defending edges in the entire class last year. Like, he was probably the best one. That dude packs a punch at contact. He sets the edge like a wall of bricks, right? And then he's got the power to, drive blockers back and pave open lanes for other defenders to see through and make tackles. So Jared Verse is kind of the standard that you're working against, right? Patrick Payton has the eye-popping athleticism, but the strength of the point of attack, the driving power, those things are clearly not there. And I think that allowed him to get washed out a lot. And then the recognition was a little inconsistent at times too on option plays. So a lot of things to work on.
Ugly. Yeah. It was a lot of things to clean up, including the tackling. Yeah. I thought that Haynes King, actually, the quarterback for Georgia Tech, thought he had a nice game. I mean, granted, it was more of a game manager type of role that he was, tasked with through the air, but when you're undisciplined with your gap responsibilities and you're missing tackles, you allow for a team who I think is inferior when it comes to talent top to bottom on the roster to be able to pull off a 3-point win in the season opener. Yeah. So Florida State, the good thing is if you get the loss on your resume, it's at the very, very, very beginning of the season. It's only a 3-point loss. It's all is not lost for Florida State, but certainly some concerning things and a lot of things to improve upon after their performance.
For sure. That's a silver lining, right? Like, if you can get your wake-up call early, get it early, right? Because there are 12 playoff spots now. So it's not the end of the world. And, if you're a Florida State fan listening and you want a silver lining here, Georgia Tech, I don't think is a bad team. Like, I think they're a good team. I think they'll finish 7-6 or 8-5. I think they'll get to a bowl game. They could win a bowl game. They have a lot of talent. They're pretty well coached. So this is the kind of game, that you could lose early on. And it could be a wake-up call for you. Florida State has the talent. They still do. It's just kind of getting to that point where you're starting to play up to your potential. And that'll be the question. Can Mike Norvell get the squad to that point? Because without Jordan Travis, without those defensive studs that they had last year, it is going to be a challenge. And let's hope they can pick it back up. But some other key performers from week 0, a few other games. RJ Maryland from SMU, man. I think 8 catches for over 160 yards, had that really long touchdown, that vertical athleticism, man. I think we mentioned him in the tight end pod. He graded out as a mid to late day 3 guy for me entering the year because I wanted to see more blocking ability. I think the blocking still has room to improve, but if you're looking for a vertical threatening move tight end, this guy's got the speed at 6'4", 237, and I really like the spatial IQ that I saw when he was stemming guys at the second level. I think he won against press in a few reps too. So the twitch, the short area energy, the explosiveness, the deep speed, and the ball tracking ability, all for his size, all very impressive. So I think a weapon in the passing game, and he showed that in his first week for SMU. It was dynamic is the word that comes to mind for me.
He went crazy.
Yeah, he was going off, man. I mean, it's always fun to watch that kind of talent at tight end because you don't always see that. A lot of guys in this class are guys that are more chain movers, right? Which that there's an equally valuable role for that as well, right? Like, I'm not diminishing that, but come on. I mean, if you got a field stretcher like RJ Maryland, it kind of changes the equation for you. So I still want to see some more blocking reps from him just to get a read on that. But as Absolutely. A weapon in the passing game, very, very dynamic. So he was a fun one. Jamal Haynes, we mentioned him real quick, but 5'9", 190. The dude is quick. The dude is instinctive, and he broke 1,000 yards last year. getting off to a strong start this year. And I think the vision, the quickness, I think that'll help him out. Maybe could carve out a role, could be a late round PFA gem. We'll see. But a lot to like early on from week 0. And we got a lot more action to sift through for week 1. So we'll get right into that. We got a few premier matchups for you all that we're going to kind of churn through. And then we are going to go through some head-to-head battles between prospects at the very end of the podcast, if we have time, depending on how much time we have, how many we can get through. But Derek, there was one game that stood out to both of us looking at this week 1 slate, and that was Texas A&M versus Notre Dame. Both of these teams are ranked. I believe they kick off 7:30 Eastern PM on ABC on Saturday. So it's going to be a late one, the evening game, while you're getting that dinner that maybe you're ordering a pizza for this one, getting some brewskis. You got these two teams going head to head, and it is a fun one. 2 quarterbacks that are in the 2025 NFL Draft quarterback discussion. Texas A&M's Connor Weigman and Notre Dame's Riley Leonard, previously of Duke. This is a fun one just for the QB duel, but then also a few other aspects. But let's talk about the QBs for a moment, because that's always where the eyes are drawn. Derek, what are you looking forward to in this one?
Yeah, I really want to. I'm very intrigued. I'm more intrigued with Connor Weigman. We haven't seen him. I feel like the best is yet to come with him. There are certainly a lot of intriguing physical tools that, with the addition of and some of the talent that they have on the perimeter, I'm really intrigued to see what Connor Weigman can do in a test against this Notre Dame defense, who I think has multiple players that are going to hear their name called in the 2025 NFL Draft, including headlined by Benjamin Morrison at corner. So kind of trying to see if, where is he in his development? Where is he in his process? Because this is a big measuring stick. Like you said, both teams are ranked. This is not a preseason cupcake type matchup that they put on the schedule. Like, you're going to play the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and they got a good squad. So I'm very, very, very intrigued by Connor Weigman, and just to kind of see, I imagine Moose Muhammad is going to be a big part of this passing attack, how he's going to fare against Benjamin Morrison, Xavier Watts, and how the offensive line is going to be able to protect Weigman. Is he going to be under pressure? Is he going to have to move off his launch point? Is he going to have to navigate the pocket against Howard Cross, and including RJ Oben, who is he's a nice little versatile piece that they were able to get via the transfer portal. Thought he showed some really nice things. I believe what it was at Duke, if I'm not mistaken.
He was at Duke.
I think he only had 5 sacks, but there's more to tell, and there's more. He's more impressive than a 5-sack guy. So I'm very interested to see how Weigman is able to handle what I think is a very, very good college football defense in the season opener.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the biggest thing is that Connor Weigman, what have we been looking for, right? More reps, a greater sample size. And excuse me, I thought the cough was gone. It is not gone yet. It's lingering. I just want it to go away completely, but it's still lingering for a little bit. So I apologize if I cough a little bit during this pod. But Connor Weigman, we've been looking for a greater sample size, more reps. And this is how it happens right here. These are quality reps against a very talented Notre Dame defense. And I think you hit the nail on the head. You got Moose Muhammad. You've got Cyrus Allen as a transfer from Louisiana Tech, who's a very versatile, I think, dynamic piece. He can get in the deep third. He can generate some big plays. But you've got Benjamin Morrison on the other side. That dude is a gnat in man coverage. He is one of the stickiest athletes that I've evaluated, just with his corrective motion, the closing burst, the reaction speed out of breaks as well. And then he is a swarming threat at the catch point. I think he has 9 interceptions and I want to say 14 pass deflections since entering the league. So he is always around the football. He's going to make it difficult for you. And this is a good test for a guy like Weigman, who, he's going to be pressured both in the pocket and wherever he throws it to at that catch point. Because in the pocket, I think one of the biggest things that I wanted to see more from Weigman in the limited sample size, right? I think the pocket instincts are still developing. There are times where he's drifting back a little too much. He's very talented off platform, but there can be a little bit more discipline with that. And these are guys on this Notre Dame front. Riley Mills, this dude is a power factory, 6'5", 295. He can just plow through you. Howard Cross III, who's just kind of one of those sawed-off defensive linemen, around 6'1", 288. He can get under you. He can penetrate up the A-gap and B-gap, right? So these are guys who can win quickly in different ways. And if they're disrupting, up the interior, if they're preventing you from stepping up, how do you deal with that as a young QB? I think that's going to be really important for Weigman. And then, like you said, RJ Oben as well. Oben, to me, could be a really nice late round PFA guy at edge. I don't know if he has an elite physical skill set, but I think he has a solid floor everywhere you look. 6'3", 262, 263, around there. So well leveraged, rocked up, and he's got a pretty vast pass rushing arsenal, right? Even though we can't always finish without elite tools, he's got enough bend, he's got enough burst, and his motor runs hot too. So this is a guy, if you're Connor Weigman and you don't have discipline, if you're drifting a little too far out, RJ Oben is the type of high motor rusher who can capitalize on that. So you're going to need discipline from Weigman. You're going to need to see a lot of the things that we haven't seen from him, not because they're not there necessarily, but because we just haven't been able to see enough of him on the field yet, right? He got injured last year. He only played 4 games as a rotational guy the year before. So we're still really early in the process of finding out what this kid can do, right? And I think this is going to be a great game to see that. And again, if he doesn't play well, if he has the ups and downs, don't worry about it because it's only the first game of the year. But this will be a really nice barometer for us to judge him off of. So it's going to be a fun one. On the other side of the ball, Riley Leonard coming from Duke. Let's talk about this guy for a minute because there was some fringe first round, not immediate first round buzz last summer. Like it was more a notion of he can make it to the first round if he plays as well as he has the talent to, right? Obviously, that's not what happened at Duke, right? I think injuries played a role. The supporting cast wasn't always the best separation-wise. And, Graham Barton as a blocker up front, I think their offensive line was generally good. I think Riley Leonard, the biggest thing for me that I remember from last summer is I wanted him to play with more. He's a tough guy, right? He can play through injuries. He's done that before. He's got the toughness. But there's a difference between toughness and poise, right? Toughness is playing through injuries, gutting through that. Poise, I think, is staying unobstructed with your process, uninterrupted with your process, making sure that your mechanics are sound and smooth, even as pressure is closing in on you, right? Because it's really kind of an instinctive thing, right? Like if you sense a 250-pound edge rusher on your blind side, that's going to make you a little skittish, even if you're a tough guy, right? So I think being more poised with his mechanics and his timing and his synergy, those were things that I wanted to see at a more consistent basis last year. We saw in 2022, 20 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, almost 3,000 yards. When he's on, he can throw with really impressive touch and arc on his throws. He can layer pace and touch and hit some really tight windows very impressively. But I just think he was never able to find comfort last year, right? So that's the biggest thing for him in Notre Dame. New supporting cast, new surroundings, find that comfort early on and try and get in a rhythm here. Try and string together some good games because he does have the talent. He's very athletic. I don't think his arm is quite as live as Weigman's, but I think he does have good arm talent, and you do have early round potential there. It is there. It's present. It's just how are we going to see that? So Texas A&M, they have a few pieces on defense. Nick Scorton, just a few, right? Nick Scorton is I think the edge duo is definitely going to be the biggest threat for Riley Leonard because what have we been talking about? Poise. We need to see him be poised in the pocket. And these are two guys who are going to try and really force him off his spot. Nick Scorton, 6'4", 280, heavy-handed rusher who can also win with finesse. He's got a mean spin move in his arsenal. I think he had 10 sacks and around 15 tackles for loss last year. So Scorton is a first-round talent. He's got really good raw pass rushing ability, and he can set the edge too. And then Shamar Turner, dude is, I think, close to that size too, and he's got the power profile to really cave in the pocket and force Leonard off his spot. So two guys who can really kind of thin the amount of pocket space you're working with. And for a quarterback like Leonard, that can be a perfect storm, but it's also a test for him that he can win and through which show evaluators that he has taken some steps in the right direction.
Yeah, Shamar Turner is an interesting one too, because we know Nick Scorton's a stud, but Shamar Turner, I mean, as a true freshman, they were lining him up at zero tech, and we've seen his role kind of expand and diversify throughout his collegiate career. I mean, plenty of reps out opposite edge of Nick Scorton last year. So I mean, he's a nice movable piece that certainly can create some matchups if they choose to use him in that type of manner along that defensive line unit front to kind of pressure Riley Leonard. Leonard scored 13 rushing touchdowns also his sophomore year. Like he's got some dual threat capabilities. The talent is there. You're right. But it's so hard to overlook what we saw last year is just the overall drop in production. It's just kind of head scratching. I know he had an ankle injury. I know he was a little bit banged up, but I want to see it early because if he struggles in this contest against a Texas A&M team that has a lot of talent, another guy that, getting a chance to look at Bryce Anderson as a safety, former quarterback in high school, someone that like plays between the ears. He plays fast too. Like kind of an intriguing defensive back. There's some things, physicality that I'm a little bit concerned about. I like it when he's able to stay patient and disciplined in off coverage. He gets a little antsy sometimes and gets himself out of position from what I saw. But when he does stay patient, he does have that, quickness and acceleration and the ball skills that are kind of intriguing to me. So I'm interested to see how how Riley Leonard performs against a pretty some very talented players on that Texas A&M defense.
Yep, they got the front and they got the talent in the back end too. Bryce Anderson, I think he had a mid 10-second 100-meter dash, I want to say, which is kind of reminiscent of the speed that you see in the range on the back end too. So if Riley Leonard isn't careful, someone like that could take advantage. So we will see. But, it's a unique matchup because not only are these two very good teams just on the CFB level, but you have two QBs with early round upside who are going to be tested in ways that really attune to what their weaknesses are right now. And so it's going to be fun to see what we learn, right, and how we can move away from that. It's going to be fun. Let's move on from QBs for just a second. We'll get back to a few later on. But there's a wide receiver, kind of a wild card in this class, Alec Iomenor from Stanford, who dominated Colorado and Travis Hunter last year. I don't remember the exact numbers. It was like 19 catches for 265 yards. I want to say maybe not 19. I think it was like 12 or something, but it was, he was racking up big plays left and right. There was one play where he mossed Hunter, like with Hunter facing directly into his chest, right? Like, I'm just going to grab this pass. There's nothing you can do about it. He was dominant in that game, right? And so now Iomenor, a lot of evaluators are kind of grappling with how do we value this guy, right? Because he's got the play strength, he's got the size. It's just a matter of, how versatile is he, his full, well-rounded skill set. What are we working with? So we're going to get a chance a little bit to see in week one. This game will be on Friday. Stanford is playing TCU, 10:30 p.m. Eastern time. And I believe I didn't get the channel down, but you'll be able to find it, I think. You'll find it. Yeah, exactly. It's college football. If you care, you'll find it. But Alec Iomenor is one of those guys who's kind of a wild card. I didn't know where to value him either entering the year. I've kind of settled on early to mid to late day two, not early to mid. I want to see a little bit more as an independent separator. He's really good on slants, really good on, vertical, working up the seam. He's got enough speed with his size to kind of, add that into his arsenal. And he's got strong hands. The play strength is a definite plus. I think the instincts, he can contort very well. But, it's just a matter of how vast is his skill set, right? I think that's the question that we're still working with. And at his size, too, I think he's a decent rack threat. I didn't think he was as good of a rack threat as I would have expected for a guy who's over 200, right? So those are a few things that I want to continue to see from him. The TCU secondary is pretty unique. Not any top prospects that are on our board, but you do have a lot of intriguing names. Travis Broughton is originally from Utah. He's another feisty corner who's going to get in your frame. They got Avery Helm, who's kind of a size speed guy. He can contend vertically with a player like Iomenor and limit vertical separation. You got Bud Clark, who's a ball hawk at safety. He's very rangy. He's very good at converting at the catch point when opportunities come his way. And then you got Nnamdi Obiazor, Abe Kamara, a couple versatile fast flowing safeties. So there's a really good amalgamation of talent in that TCU secondary. And I think all of those guys, depending on where Iomenor lines up, I imagine they'll get him on motions a little bit. He's going to be tested in different ways. And I think this is a good opportunity for him to show that he is that caliber of playmaker that we'd been accustomed to hoping he would become at Stanford.
Yeah, I definitely want to see how he strings together multiple performances. Because if we want to see, if he really is in that day two conversation and he is an alpha on this offense, because we saw certainly, just the Colorado game against a prospect like Travis Hunter is enough to get your attention, right? This is a unique secondary. I love Abe Kamara. That man plays with reckless abandon. JUCO player actually that transferred to TCU. He's fun. He's a fun watch. But it's going to be interesting to see, like you said, how Stanford kind of moves him around the formation. Is he somebody that has a lot of formation versatility and has a pretty diverse route tree and multiple ways to win, or is he kind of limited in how he can create separation? We know we can run a slant, that's for damn sure. But I mean, what else? And he's strong at the catch point, and there is some contact balance and some sneaky yak ability that I like. It's just, is he going to be able to create separation consistently in multiple ways, against different secondaries? This season, he is certainly somebody that's on my radar that could climb into that day 2 conversation. Right now, I think I've got him more like early day 3, but he's certainly in that range. And I want to see the year-over-year improvement, because the young breakout narrative can certainly be something that I do pay attention to at the wide receiver position. But for a player like him that has shown flashes, I'm really interested to see how he's been in the lab this year, how they're going to, expand what they asked him to do last year in the Stanford offense. And if he can, open the season with a pretty dominant performance against TCU, I'll go from you had me interested, but now you have my attention.
Exactly. What's at stake here is just kind of the bigger share of attention, right? And I think we've seen time and time again, the best receiver prospects, a lot of times, like, it doesn't really matter who their QB is or what their offensive situation is. It matters to a degree, right? But if you're a certain level of good, you are going to produce. You are going to dictate targets. They're going to come your way, and you're going to be able to, generate production off of that, right? So really intrigued to see. Stanford's offense isn't the best unit in the league. It's not like devoid of talent, right? But Alec Iomanor is definitely the premier threat in that offense, right? So Can he take control? Can he be authoritative and become that caliber of player for them? He broke 1,000 yards last year, right? But a lot of that, like we were talking about earlier, was that big game against Colorado. He was never quite able to replicate that level of production, which, to be fair, that's tough. You're not going to get 295 yards every week, but a little more consistency, like you said, stacking good games. Can he do that? Can he be that dependable threat week in and week out? Does he have the skill set to do that? That's kind of what we're watching for against TCU. So again, 10:30 p.m. Eastern on Friday. So don't miss it. If you're thinking Saturday, get to the TV, get to the couch on Friday, and lock that one down, because you'll get to see Alec Iomanor and a very talented player against TCU. So it'll be fun. Let's go to the next QB matchup that we had on the docket. And this was a fun one because you mentioned this player in a previous podcast, and he was one of my first evaluations this summer. I still have a day 3 grade on him, right? I still think that's ultimately where he goes. He's going to be, I think, a 6th or 7th year. He's older, right? He's been in the league for a long time.
Long in the tooth.
Yeah, exactly, right? So I think, Wisconsin is where he started. We're talking about Graham Mertz, Florida quarterback. Wisconsin was where he started. He was a highly touted recruit. He was in the Elite 11. He was in the throwing competition, and I think he might have won it. My memory might be betraying me here. I'll have to double check, but I know he was competing in the Elite 11. So very talented thrower, passer. And, at first, I think his first game at Wisconsin was very strong. And then after that, it kind of collapsed around him, right? And you can argue what contributed to that. The supporting cast was never very good. The offensive line has always been decent in Wisconsin, but offensively, I think, Paul Chryst never quite put enough weaponry around him, right? You can make the excuses that you want, but you can also look at the tape and say Graham Mertz's accuracy, his processing, those were things that did not develop at all after he arrived at Wisconsin, right? So last year, he transferred to Florida to take the reins from Anthony Richardson, who went 4th overall to the Colts. And he actually had a really good year. I think he was very efficient as a passer. The completion percentage was big time up. And again, you're not going to hear me cite completion percentage and just leave it at that, right? Like, it's one thing to say that, but you can look back to Bo Nix this past year. He broke the record, right? And I'm not going to say that's not impressive. It was, but look at the ADOT, the distribution, right? Some offenses just ask different things of quarterbacks, right? Whereas with Anthony Richardson the year before, he was threatening down the field, intermediate, deep. He was taking a lot of chances, right? Naturally, there's a variance when you throw farther down the field. The completion percentage is not going to be quite as high because there's more variance with those types of throws more often than not. Graham Mertz, he was distributing a lot of time, but also taking some shots. I like the arm talent. I still do. I think it's one of the better traits on his profile, his ability to whip it both in structure and off platform as well. Because he's not the most dynamic athlete, but he's got enough off platform ability to work with. And, his accuracy definitely took a big step up. I'm still looking to see if he can reach that next level as a processor, right? And my big thing with Mertz is, did his time at Wisconsin fully erode that part of his game, or can he build it back with another year at Florida? His first year at Florida was a big step in the right direction. I think coming out of Wisconsin, he was probably a UDFA, right? Now he's back in the draftable conversation. Now, especially for an older QB prospect who's not an elite athlete, the biggest question is, can you take that next step on the operational platform and show that you can become that elite processor and show that you can reach that next step with accuracy, right? And his first week, man, it's going to be a fun matchup. The Miami Hurricanes, Mario Cristobal, Cameron Ward on the other side, who's another really good QB prospect who's going to be tested. But the reason we picked Mertz is because this Miami defense is packed with talent, especially on the defensive front. You've got Akeem Mesidor, Tyler Barron, Simeon Barrow, CJ Clark. You got Ruben Bain, who's not eligible but is a very good edge rusher. And then you've got Francisco Mauigoa at linebacker as well. Hard charging player. So a lot of talent on that front seven. I think Graham Mertz is one of those players where, to combat that, he's going to need to be on his A game. He's going to need to process quickly. He's going to need to get the ball out quickly. And, there's not a lot of room for error, right? And that's the biggest thing with Mertz. When you're not an elite athlete, right? The margin for error is slimmer. How do you combat that? You take it up a notch on the operational side. And that's what we've been waiting to see for this guy. I think 2023 was a great step in the right direction. Now, this Miami game is going to show us, is this where it ends? Is this where he maxes out? Or is there more that we can get from this guy?
Correct. Yeah, no, I'm not 100% sure where I fall on Graham Mertz right now. It's certainly some things that you already mentioned that are encouraging. Obviously the jump in completion percentage, and at least knowing and feeling comfortable with where to go with the ball in certain situations. He looked more comfortable than he did ever in the Wisconsin during his Wisconsin career. The air yards per attempt, or adjusted air yards per attempt, was actually a career high too at 8.8. Okay. So, it wasn't. I still agree with you that, they did a lot of things to kind of give him easy throws, out on the, like in a horizontal stretch, closer to the line of scrimmage, some screen games, off play action, RPOs type stuff. Like, yeah, I get it. And I agree with that. And that's a good thing. Like, as much as, Florida Gator fans may not be very happy with Billy Napier right now, but I mean, it is something where if you want to try to give your play to your quarterback's strengths, that's where they felt his strengths were. And so we saw some encouraging things, but like you mentioned, can he take the next step? Because he's going to, in order for him to get into the day two conversation for me, we're going to have to see a heck of a lot more. One way you can do that though, is that if you come out and you drop 30 something on Miami to start the season and you kind of catch our eye and okay, maybe the Florida Gators have got something a little bit more than what we expected entering the season. Obviously losing a player like Ricky Pearsall in that passing attack, and also Trevor Etienne transferring from Florida to Georgia doesn't help matters, but you still got Eugene Wilson, you still got Khalil Jackson. I still think that there are some pieces on this Florida offense that will allow Graham Mertz to go ahead, and if he has developed and he has taken that next step as a processor, like you said, he's been in college football, this is entering his sixth season, he should be peaking at this point. If it's ever going to happen, it's going to happen now. So I'm really interested to see how Mertz starts the 2024 campaign.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that you mentioned, the ways that he did thrive last year, getting him in those screen games in rhythm. And I think boot actions and rollouts, which is a big staple of a lot of NFL offenses. He's very good on those because he is very good off platform. There was the game against South Carolina where he actually mounted a comeback and they won that game. And a lot of it was Graham Mertz getting out on the run. Like, he's not an elite rushing threat, but he can throw off platform. He's got a really elastic arm, a lot of very easy velocity generation, and he can lead receivers and kind of press them open in the deep third, which is really impressive to see. So you have enough talent to facilitate that kind of rise. The biggest thing for me, and we talk about processing. what specifically do you want to see from him? For me, it's the independent processing. It's working through your progressions left to right and diagnosing quickly once you get to your second read, right? If it's open. I think there are still times where Mertz is a see it, throw it type of guy, which, in the college, there's nothing wrong with that. But again, in the NFL, your response time does have to be quicker. And I think there were some throws that he left on the table because he didn't quite see them at a level where you're anticipating them, right? So he lost Ricky Pearsall. He's getting back another guy from Arizona State, Elijah Badger, who's another big play threat. So that'll be a fun one to see how they mesh. But the talent is there. Can he take the next step, or is this what he is? If this is what he is, I think he's still draftable as a potential backup, right? But can he rise in that conversation? That's kind of what we're looking for. So that'll be a fun one. We got 2 more QBs to go through. We'll go through these a little quicker because they're a little more cut and dry. This particular one is very cut and dry. It's very good QB against a very good defense. It's Carson Beck against the Clemson Tigers. Carson Beck, I believe it's at noon on Saturday. So high noon kickoff. You got Carson Beck going up against a Clemson defense that has Barrett Carter, TJ Parker, Avion Terrell, Khalif Barnes, who you mentioned before the pod, he's replacing Andrew Makuba. But none of those guys are draft eligible right now, but all of them are very talented, and we could see them in early round mocks in 2026 or so. Then you have DeMonte Capehart at nose tackle. You got Peyton Page at defensive tackle. A lot of talent on that Clemson defense. So real quick, Derek, what are you looking forward to for Carson Beck? I think he's your QB2 behind Shadir Sanders, right?
Yeah, but I mean, this is all subject to change because we saw some really damn good things from Carson Beck last year. And of course, it's Georgia. So, I mean, you're looking forward to seeing how Trevor Etienne looks in this offense. They're loaded everywhere across the board. So, I mean, Dominic Lovett, Arian Smith, Dylan Bell, like you're expecting this Georgia offense to just continue to roll because of the guy they have under center. They're getting a test. Like 3 true freshmen last year were pretty damn impressive for the Clemson Tigers. And TJ Parker, we may be talking about him as potentially the best 2026 draft prospect as far as the edge goes, because he showed a lot of very encouraging things. But even Avion Terrell, I thought as a true freshman at cornerback, I thought he was a bit of a pest, kind of a mosquito that just gets in everything. You just can't.
That's always a good thing to say about a defensive back. He was a bit of a pest, right? Anything else is a bad thing. Right. Defensive back, very good thing.
Yeah, no, and Khalil Barnes. I mean, part of the reason why I don't expect any sort of significant drop off, losing a guy like Andrew Makuba, who I think is a very good player in a conversation for like a day 2 pick this upcoming draft cycle. He looked very effective and very comfortable in a nickelback type role. So I'm really interested. I mean, then you got Barrett Carter, who's in the conversation for the best linebacker in this class, off-ball linebacker. So, I mean, there's a lot of talent on the defensive side of the football. And I think Georgia's going to have themselves a pretty nice test in week number 1.
Yeah, and also, going beyond wide receiver at weapons, they got Oscar Delp and Benjamin Eurosek, who they got from Stanford at tight end.
2 very good tight ends.
Eurosek is fun. I like the versatility with him. They were really utilizing his motion versatility. He can get schemed rack touches. He can threaten vertically. He's got really good body control. So Brock Bowers is gone. How do you fill that void? To a certain degree, I don't think you can fill it. Brock Bowers is Brock Bowers. Like that's a very unique talent. But Delp and Eurosek, those are 2 really good tight ends. And we know Georgia likes to incorporate their tight ends. So that'll be another fun aspect, especially with Barrett Carter at linebacker. He is going to be tasked with a lot of pressure covering those 2 guys, especially with the amount that Carson Beck likes to go to his tight ends over the middle of the field. So that'll be a little fun matchup in that one. But spoiler alert, 2 very good football teams. Make sure you circle that one on Saturday. It'll be a fun one. Our next one, final QB matchup, and then we'll get into some of the head-to-heads. But Drew Aller from Penn State is playing West Virginia in the backyard brawl. I know you are a fan of Aller entering the year. I liked a lot of what I saw on tape too. I think the biggest thing for me, learning when to rein in that arm, because he's got such a strong arm, but the accuracy is still a big work in progress because, again, sometimes you're going to push it too far, not really knowing how to manage that arm strength with certain types of throws, right? Like bucket throws require a different level of oomph, velocity generation. You need to get a little more loft and touch in there. And I think he's still learning how to do that. So with a young QB, it's not something that's not uncharacteristic. It's pretty common, right? Drew Aller has the physical talent, and I'm very excited to see what he can do. West Virginia's defense, they have a very versatile, hard-charging safety in Aubrey Burks, who's fulfilled a number of different roles. He wears a number of different hats in that defense. He's going to be a tough play, especially with the uncertainty at wide receiver for Penn State. And then you got Sean Martin, who's a powerful defensive lineman on the front, and then you got Anthony Wilson Jr., who's another experienced safety. So, West Virginia, Penn State, backyard brawl, always good football. But in particular, Drew Aller, very excited to see what he can do with Andy Kotelnicki, who is from Kansas. He coached Jalen Daniels, and we've mentioned this before on the podcast, right? Kotelnicki is not working with the same kind of rushing talent, right? Drew Aller does not have that level of mobility that Daniels had, but at the same time, the best offensive minds kind of change their offense with the talent they have at QB. So Drew Aller, you can do a lot of things with that type of arm talent. If he can improve his accuracy, I think he can open up a lot of doors, not only for himself and his draft stock, but for the Penn State offense as a whole. Derek, you like Aller a lot. What are you looking forward to in this one?
Yeah, you mentioned already kind of like knowing when to feather in throws rather than just try to throw it through a brick wall. The mechanics, like the because he relies a bit too much for me on his arm, and I guess it kind of plays into that, right? He's not always aligned with his front foot. With where he wants to go with the football, which then oftentimes it just disjoints the synergy between his base and the launch point, which he can make up for it because he's got an absolute cannon attached to his arm. I get that, but tightening up those mechanics is something that I want to see from snap to snap to rep to rep. Because I saw some anticipation. I saw some processing. The arm talent is obviously there. I do think that there's enough movement and mobility to extend plays. He's not going to be an elite off-script creator, but there's enough there to be able to work with that he doesn't just have to operate within structure. You're not going to get much from him as a pure ball carrier. That's fine though. Like as long as you can excel at the passing aspect of it, which you mentioned the changes, along the offensive coordinator and some of the weapons. I really like Tyler Warren. I'm interested to see how his role expands in this new offensive scheme and without Theo Johnson. Now in the NFL with the New York Giants. Julian Fleming also a nice receiver transfer that I expect to be a big part of this passing attack. So I just want to see more consistency from Drew Aller because I've seen the flashes and the flashes excite the living hell out of me. It's just that, snap to snap consistency, that could really help with his ball placement and his consistency with accuracy because he can make every throw that you need to be able to make at the next level. It's just really that the mechanical consistency in a ilk that kind of reminds me a little bit of Drake May that I would love to see him improve year over year.
Yeah, for sure. Looking at the tape, I had a similar conclusion. Like, I think the processing is there. I think he does. There are a few times, especially down the field in the deep third, where there are windows to go untested. I think that vision, that full field vision is still getting developed, which is fine. He's a young QB. He's only 1 year. But again, the components that you mentioned, a good sense of timing, break anticipation, particularly on like comeback routes where he's throwing it before the receiver plants and drives. That's a really good thing to have, because again, when you're a throw it thrower, you can tell because there's at least a quarter second delay where it's just, now he's breaking, now I'm going to throw it. And that might be the amount of time that the DB needs to close that gap. So timing is of the essence. I think Drew Aller as a young player understands that. I think he has the arm talent, like you said. It's just getting that accuracy down pat, learning how to control his tools to a greater degree. And I'm very excited to see what he can do in this first week because, again, it's only one game. It's not going to tell you everything you need to know, but it is going to get us started. It's going to give us that landmark where we can go on and go ahead. So a lot of fun QB matchups. We got around, we got a little less than 5 minutes here. So we got a few more head-to-head matchups. Yes, sir. Let's rip. So these are the ones that I isolated for this week. And obviously, it's week 1. So we have a lot of kind of upper conference, lower conference matchups. So, not a ton of big ticket ones in the head-to-head section, but a few that caught my eye that I'll read off here. Colorado State wide receiver Torrey Horton going up against the Texas secondary. I think that's a fun one. You've got Andrew Makuba, like you said, at Texas now. You've got Jedi Barron, a very versatile defensive back, physical guys that I think will match up well with Horton. Torrey Horton kind of reminds me of Dontavian Wicks, who's with the Packers now. I think they're similar players.
Ooh, I like
proportional
that.
length, short area twitch. Not the fastest guy on the vertical plane, but he's explosive, physical, and I think he'll be dependable in the NFL level. So I like that.
That's an outstanding.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That was one that I kind of came to. I was like, "Ooh, we're cooking here. We're cooking." But I like it a lot. Minnesota tackle Ariante Ursary. He's a fun player, physical, very explosive on the attack. 6'6", 330, I think around there. He's going up against Kamen Rucker from North Carolina. Rucker is around 6'2", the bull, the butcher, man. 6'2", 250. He is explosive. He is bendy, but he's violent and physical too. So I'm really looking forward to seeing if Rucker can take it to Ursary, because Ursary is not. He's a physical player by all means, and I think if Rucker, especially in the passing phase, if he can get some disruption, it'll be a big stock up game for him. One of my favorite stand up rushers in the class. You've got Wisconsin wide receiver Will Pauling versus Western Michigan corner Bilal Cohn. You've got Arizona offensive tackle Jonah Savainaya against New Mexico edge Antonio Harris Jr. Harris Jr. played at Indiana State last year. He caught my eye a little bit. I think he's got good explosion, good bend. He's more of a rotational guy so far this season. New Mexico played in week 0, so the reps aren't coming right away. But if he does get on the field, keep an eye on this guy. Alabama A&M tackle Carson Vincent. He is one of the top HBCU prospects in this coming class, going up against former Appalachian State and current Auburn edge rusher Jalen McLeod, another high motor guy, a little smaller but powerful, explosive. He can work.
You see that rep where he forced two fumbles on one play?
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah, that's where the high motor comes in. Like this guy will go until the whistle. He will go until the whistle, never anything less. So
he'll chase you to the bench. Like
that's how bad this is. Going down the tunnel. Oh, guess who's coming? So I think Carson Vincent, that'll be a good test for him, especially against an SEC team like Auburn. If he holds his own, we could be looking at a rise for that HBCU prospect. But going down the list farther here, Florida State edge Patrick Payton. We mentioned it after week 0. Needs a bounce back. He's going up against Boston College offensive tackle Ozzie Trapilo, who's another guy that I like a little bit. I think he's physical. I think he's powerful at the point of attack. He's got a good size length combination. This is another one where Patrick Payton will really have to show off that enhanced strength, because we know, on the Florida State site, he got above 250 pounds this year, right? So he beefed up a little bit. So far, it hasn't translated on the field, right? Only 1 week in, but I think this is a good bounce back opportunity because Ozzie Trapilo is another physical, powerful blocker who's going to give you everything you got. We got LSU wide receiver CJ Daniels, transfer from Liberty, going up against USC corner John Humphrey. I think this is kind of a buy low matchup. Both these guys have the raw talent, so we'll be able to see if they can kind of emerge in their new scenarios. I believe Humphrey transferred over to USC too. So 2 guys in new situations, new locations, new settings. Can they make the most of it and emerge? CJ Daniels in particular, I feel like he's got the vertical explosiveness, the speed, and the route running flexibility where he could be a riser in this wide receiver class. And especially after seeing Brian Thomas Jr. at LSU, it's hard. LSU doesn't have Jaden Daniels anymore. They got Garrett Nussmeier, but CJ Daniels is in position to take advantage of that. And then finally, we got LSU tackles Will Campbell, Emory Jones Jr. against USC edge Jamil Muhammad, another kind of high motor guy, a little smaller, but he's got that compact, sawed-off power that you like to see with edge rushers. Derek, I've been talking long enough about this batch. Which matchups are standing out to you the most here?
We'll touch on Jamil Muhammad real quick. I think you're going to need more than just your athleticism to be able to beat this tackle duo. I really want. It's a good measuring stick though, because I think if he can make some splash plays and get some nice reps against either of these, probably first round talents, entering the NFL this upcoming draft cycle, Muhammad could really give himself an opportunity to elevate his draft stock significantly if he can make some splash plays. But I tend to think that if I'm a betting man, I don't think he's coming away with a sack in this one. That's a dynamic duo that they
watching
have.
Watching that duo just through the season is going to be a treat, because they've always been good. Like even last year, we knew they were good, but they're both entering this next season. I think the sky's the limit for sure.
Will Pauling is one that's very interesting to me. obviously projects as kind of as probably a slot receiver at the next level, right? Because that's kind of even how Wisconsin uses them. They use them a lot in the manufactured touch, screen game, quick game, horizontal stretch. They're trying to get him out in space, and he's got some really nice some rack ability. Actually, there's times where I think, damn, he looks like a running back as a ball carrier. Like, there's some really nice things about his game, but just how impactful is he going to be? How dynamic is he going to be in this Wisconsin offense? That's I would love to see him get off to a fast start, because I think he's a nice player. I just right now I think he's more. Tell me if I'm crazy. I think he's more of a day 3 guy.
Yeah, I mean, and hey, to be fair, most of these guys are day 3 or like that. That's where the proportionality is. But he's quick. I think he played at Cincinnati before Wisconsin, right? He came over with Luke Fickell, and he's dynamic for sure. He's quick. A lot of things that you want in a slot guy, right? And he's got Tyler Van Dyke throwing to him as well at Wisconsin. So at least an experienced passer with the arm to get the ball down the field. It'll be intriguing to see how they mesh early on.
Yeah, and then the other one, just Torrey Horton. Yeah, because I really thought that he was going to be, potentially in the conversation for a late day 2 pick if he would have came out this year. He's just gotten better and better and better. I mean, I think it's his receptions and his receiving yards have climbed every single season, and it's going to be a little difficult to improve upon, 96 receptions that we saw from him last year. I mean, he was the focal point of that passing attack, and continues to show. I mean, the Wicks comp is certainly one that really jumps out to me, because I don't think he's a vertical field stretcher at the next level. I just don't think he has enough, top end juice. That's fine. You don't have to be that to fit into a receiver room and garner some sort of role. Wicks is an outstanding route runner. There's a lot of flexibility in stem work that you really like, in his hands at the catch point, and in his ability to create after the catch is underrated. There's a lot of similarities with him and Dontavion Wicks. I think it's a great comp, but can he take it to another level? Because it's going to be hard to poke holes in this guy's prospect profile if he improves upon 96 receptions for 1,136 yards. Like, it's I'm just interested to see if he can take his game to the next level. And he obviously returned for a reason. We'll see what his fifth year in the at the collegiate ranks produces. Yeah,
because he was originally at Nevada, and then now he's at Colorado State, and he's been productive with the Rams for sure. And I think I'm kind of having the same conversation in my mind. Like, I can see this guy being a top 100 pick. I can see him being a mid to late day 2, being a really solid player. But is there any elevation potential beyond that, right? Because if you went back already an older prospect, we'll see. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I like the Wicks comp. It was one I usually don't say comps unless they really jump out at me, or if I've had time to study them, which is usually in March and April, right? When we're really getting into the weeds with it. But I just think about the explosiveness without the long speed, right? But then the short area twitch, the violent motion with the route running, like you said, and then the proportional length, the strong hands, the physicality. That's a comp that I like a lot. And I think you look at Torrey Horton against this Texas defense. They lost Terrence Brooks on the boundary, but they got Andrew Makuba at the nickel position. Jedi Barron will be a very versatile physical safety for them, who might also play nickel and dime looks as well. So there are a lot of threats, especially if you're working over in the middle of the field. There's a good chance he might crash into those guys more than once. So a lot of physicality, a lot of athleticism. We will see if Torrey Horton can out-muscle those guys, out-nuance them. If he can, it could be at least another feather in his cap for what is a very solid prospect in the 2025 NFL draft.
Exactly. So you want to start seeing him put together, great tape against the opportunities that he's going to have this year against NFL caliber talent. So, I mean, I think for his prospect profile, this could be a very nice measuring stick as to where he is and what development or, growth we've seen from, 2023 to 2024. And, I mean, I don't think Colorado State is going to upset Texas. So I imagine they're going to be throwing the ball quite a bit if they're trailing, which means we're going to see probably a lot of opportunities for Torrey Horton to shine out to start the season.
For sure. And hey, on the other side too, got to mention it. You're going to get to see Quinn Ewers, Kelvin Banks Jr. at offensive tackle, Isaiah Bond as well at Texas in his new destination. So that'll be fun too in and of itself. So it's going to be a good
Even that running back
Yeah,
room, is
exactly.
loaded
I
with
don't know if
with
CJ
talent.
Baxter, I haven't been following it. I think one of them might be out for injury, but they're always loaded at RB. They always got at least 2 to 3 mouths to feed, so it's gonna be fun to see what they can do there. But yeah, I mean that's our week 1 preview. That's what we've got for you. And again, stick with us every Tuesday this season. We will be back recording for each week. We'll be previewing the matchups to come, both at a prospect level and at a CFB level as the storylines start to develop a little bit more. So it's just the start. Got a lot more on tap for all you listening. Thank you as always. And thank you for sticking with us through the summer. It's been a long one, but we are finally here. The season is here, and a lot of things left to come with it. So with that, I'm Ian Cummings for Derek Tate. Thank you as always for listening. Peace out. Have a good one.